The International Airport lounge was busy, filled with rolling suitcases, quiet conversations, and non-stop boarding announcements. In one quiet corner, a man stood calmly, almost unnoticed, like he had all the time in the world. It was Ozzy Osbourne. He was dressed simply in a black jacket, dark sunglasses, and worn-in boots. No security, no manager, no entourage, just a small travel bag in his hand. To anyone passing by, he didn't look like a global rock legend. He looked ordinary. Ozzy stood there casually, glancing up at the departure screen, completely relaxed. That's when an airport employee walked toward him. The staff member looked Ozzy up and down, made a quick judgment, then spoke in a casual, dismissive tone. "Sir, the driver's waiting area is over there." He pointed toward a side corridor outside the VIP lounge. No one around paid much attention. In a place like this, drivers and assistants were constantly being redirected. It seemed normal. Nobody questioned it. Ozzy slowly turned his head toward the employee. Behind his sunglasses, his expression didn't change. He gave a small, calm smile and said nothing. No argument. No explanation. No. "Do you know who I am?" He simply stayed where he was. The employee assumed Ozzy hadn't heard him. He stepped closer and repeated himself, this time with more authority in his voice. "Sir, this is the VIP lounge. Drivers aren't allowed here." A few people nearby began to notice. A businessman paused mid-step. A woman lowered her phone slightly. Someone at a table glanced over, curious. Ozzy remained completely calm. There was no anger in his posture, no frustration. Just quiet confidence, like he knew something everyone else didn't. He adjusted his bag slightly and continued standing exactly where he was. The employee frowned, clearly annoyed now. From his point of view, this was just another driver refusing to follow instructions. But what he didn't realize was that he had just made a very public mistake. And in just a few moments, the entire terminal would realize it too. But what happened next changed everything in that terminal. The staff member didn't walk away. Instead, he stepped to the side and motioned again, more firmly this time, clearly expecting Ozzy to follow. VIP passengers continued passing through the lounge. Well-dressed men and women flashing boarding passes, rolling designer luggage, barely glancing at the scene. From the outside, it looked simple. A staff member doing his job, a driver standing where he shouldn't be. But the tone was changing. "Sir," the employee said again, his voice tighter now, "you need to move. You're not supposed to be standing here." Ozzy turned fully toward him. His voice was calm, polite, almost gentle. "I'm exactly where I need to be." The words weren't loud, but they were clear. The employee blinked, clearly not expecting resistance, especially not delivered so calmly. His jaw tightened. "Excuse me," he replied. "This area is reserved for VIP passengers." Ozzy nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the rule. "I understand," he said. And yet, he didn't move. That's when irritation crept into the employee's expression from his point of view. This was no longer routine. It was defiance around them. People began to notice. A businessman slowed his pace. A woman near the coffee station stopped scrolling on her phone. Two men exchanged looks, sensing tension. One bystander quietly pulled out their phone. Not obviously, just enough to record. Then another did the same. The employee shifted his stance, crossing his arms. "Sir, if you don't move, I'll have to call a supervisor," he warned. Ozzy didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't explain who he was or why he belonged there. He simply stood, relaxed, grounded, unbothered. That calmness only made the situation worse. The employee shook his head in disbelief. To him, Ozzy wasn't calm. He was being disrespectful. VIP passengers continued walking past, some glancing briefly, others completely unaware that something unusual was unfolding right beside them. The contrast was striking. Expensive suits moved freely through the space, while a man dressed simply was being pushed aside without a second thought. More phones appeared. Someone whispered, "Why is he talking to him like that?" Another voice responded quietly, "He hasn't even done anything." Ozzy remained silent now, not because he was intimidated, but because he didn't need to say more. Every second he stayed calm, the tension grew. Every second the employee pushed, the scene became harder to ignore. What no one realized yet was that this moment of silent disrespect was about to turn into something unforgettable. Have you ever seen a legend judged by their appearance? Comment yes or no below. The situation escalated quietly, but noticeably. After a brief exchange over his radio, the employee stepped aside. Less than a minute later, a supervisor approached. His posture was stiffer, his expression more serious, the kind that signaled authority. He stopped directly in front of Ozzy. "Sir," the supervisor said, his voice firm and slightly harsh, "we've already explained this to you. You need to cooperate. You're blocking the VIP path." His tone made it clear. This wasn't a request anymore. The surrounding conversations in the lounge softened. People pretended not to listen, but no one fully looked away. Everyone could feel that something was about to happen. Ozzy listened patiently. Then he nodded, no irritation, no sarcasm, no attitude. "I'm not blocking anyone," Ozzy replied calmly. "I'm just standing." The supervisor frowned, clearly frustrated by how composed Ozzy was. Most people, when confronted like this, either became defensive or nervous. Ozzy did neither. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't step back, and most importantly, he didn't drop a name. "No, I'm Ozzy Osbourne." No hint of fame, no appeal to status. That calmness began to confuse people. A man near the window whispered to his wife, "Why is he so relaxed?" Another bystander muttered, "Anyone else would have snapped by now." The supervisor crossed his arms, leaning in slightly. "Sir, this is your final warning," he said. "If you don't move, we'll have to escort you out." The word escort landed heavily. Phones were now fully out. Someone zoomed in. Someone else stepped closer. A few passengers stopped walking altogether. Ozzy adjusted the strap of his bag and looked the supervisor straight in the eyes. "I'm not causing a disturbance," he said evenly. "And I'm not disrespecting anyone." His voice carried, steady, controlled, confident. That only added fuel to the tension. The supervisor exhaled sharply through his nose. He wasn't used to people responding like this. Usually pressure worked, authority worked. Here, it wasn't. Around them, confusion grew. Some people assumed Ozzy must be important. No ordinary person stayed this calm under pressure. Others assumed he was about to get removed. No one knew which way it would go. The lounge felt smaller, heavier. The supervisor glanced around, noticing the phones, the attention, the growing crowd. This was no longer a private interaction. It was becoming a public scene. Still, Ozzy stood there, relaxed, grounded, unmoved. And that was what made the moment unbearable. Because when someone refuses to break under pressure, it forces everyone else to question who really holds the power. The tension hit its peak. Something had to give. And everyone in that lounge knew it. At first, it was just a look. A young man sitting near the charging station had been watching the situation quietly from a distance. He wasn't trying to film. He wasn't whispering. He was simply observing. Curious about why this man was being pressured so hard for doing nothing at all. Then he noticed something. As Ozzy shifted slightly, the sleeve of his jacket pulled back just enough to reveal part of a tattoo on his forearm. The young man leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. That tattoo felt familiar. His gaze slowly moved from the ink to Ozzy's face. The sunglasses, the shape of his jaw, the unmistakable presence. And then, he froze. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. For a full second, his brain refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. Then he whispered, barely loud enough for the person next to him to hear. "Wait, is that Ozzy Osbourne?" The person beside him laughed quietly. "No way." But then they looked. And their smile disappeared. They looked again. "Hold on," they said. That whisper didn't stay small. It passed from one person to another. Soft at first, then curious, then charged. "Is that really him? That can't be." Why would he be standing there alone? A woman a few feet away subtly lifted her phone and zoomed in. Her eyes widened. Oh my God. The energy in the lounge shifted. People weren't just watching anymore. They were reevaluating. Every detail suddenly made sense. The calm, the confidence, the refusal to move. But the staff didn't notice. The supervisor was still focused on control, not recognition. He spoke again, his tone sharp with impatience. "Sir, I need you to move now." Ozzy turned toward him calmly. He didn't correct him. He didn't say his name. He didn't reveal anything. He simply met the supervisor's eyes and stayed silent. That silence was powerful. Behind the supervisor, the whispers grew louder. "That really looks like him. I've seen him live, some tattoos. There's no way this is happening." The staff member who had first confronted Ozzy glanced around, confused by the sudden attention. He followed the direction of people's stares, but still didn't connect the dots. Ozzy remained perfectly composed. He wasn't enjoying this. He wasn't waiting for a reveal. He was letting the moment speak for itself. The young fan stood up slowly, heart racing, still unsure whether he was witnessing something unbelievable or imagining it. The question hung in the air, heavy and electric. What if that really is Ozzy Osbourne? And if it was, then everyone in this lounge was about to witness a moment they'd never forget. Because the truth was seconds away from surfacing, and once it did, there would be no way to take it back. The noise in the lounge slowly faded. Whispers softened. Footsteps paused. Even the background announcements seemed distant. Ozzy stood in the same place, still calm. The supervisor waited, clearly expecting an argument, an excuse, or a sudden breakdown. Instead, Ozzy spoke. His voice was low, steady, confident, but not aggressive. "You shouldn't judge people by how they look." That was it. No explanation, no anger, just one sentence, and it landed heavier than any confrontation ever could. The supervisor froze for a moment, caught off guard by the simplicity of it. The words didn't challenge authority, but they challenged judgment. The crowd went completely silent, not an uncomfortable silence, a listening silence. People felt it. The sentence echoed in the space between everyone standing there. Suddenly, this wasn't about airport rules or lounge access anymore. It was about respect. Ozzy didn't smirk. He didn't raise his chin. He didn't use the moment to assert power. There was no attitude in his posture, no sense of superiority, just calm truth. The staff member shifted his weight slightly, clearly uncomfortable now. His confidence had faded, replaced by uncertainty. He glanced around, noticing the eyes on him. The phone still recording, the passengers watching closely. For the first time, he seemed to realize how this looked from the outside. The supervisor cleared his throat. "Sir, we're just following procedure," he said. But the words lacked conviction. Ozzy nodded slowly, acknowledging the statement without agreeing or disagreeing. "I understand," he replied quietly. That response only deepened the tension, because it was clear now, Ozzy wasn't resisting. He wasn't being difficult. He wasn't seeking attention. He was standing on principle. A woman near the window whispered, "That took courage." Another man murmured, "He handled that perfectly." The supervisor looked toward the original employee, who now avoided eye contact altogether. The atmosphere had shifted. The authority in the situation no longer felt one-sided. Ozzy remained silent again. He didn't push, he didn't need to. The sentence had already done its work. People weren't asking who he was anymore. They were asking why he was being treated this way in the first place. And that question made the staff deeply uncomfortable, because the answer was obvious. And in just moments, the truth behind Ozzy's identity would remove any remaining doubt. The balance of power was changing, slowly, quietly, and everyone could feel it. The silence in the lounge was suddenly broken by a familiar sound. A soft chime echoed through the terminal. Then the intercom came to life. "Attention please, the private jet for Mr. Ozzy Osbourne is now ready for boarding." For half a second, nothing moved. The terminal froze, conversation stopped mid-sentence, phones stopped shaking. Even the staff seemed unsure if they had heard it correctly. Then reality hit. Head snapped toward Ozzy all at once. The supervisor's face drained of color, white, completely white. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The confidence he had carried moments earlier disappeared in an instant. The original staff member stared at Ozzy in shock, eyes wide, posture stiff. His earlier authority now looked painfully misplaced. Around them, the crowd reacted all at once. Gasps, murmurs, uncontrolled disbelief. No way. I knew it. That's actually him. Ozzy didn't react. He didn't smile. He didn't look around. He didn't say a word. He simply adjusted his bag and turned calmly toward the boarding gate. As he walked, the path cleared instantly, not because someone ordered it, but because everyone stepped aside naturally. At the gate, the glass doors opened. Outside on the runway, a sleek private jet waited, engines humming softly. The door was already open, and standing at the bottom of the stairs was the captain himself. He smiled the moment he saw Ozzy and stepped forward. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Osbourne," the captain said respectfully, extending his hand. Ozzy returned the gesture with a polite nod. "Thank you," he replied. That was all. Behind them, the supervisor stood frozen, watching the moment unfold. The same man who had demanded compliance now looked smaller, humbled by a truth he hadn't taken the time to consider. The staff members swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the ground. The tables had completely turned. But not because Ozzy demanded respect, because respect had revealed itself. As Ozzy stepped onto the jet, the crowd finally reacted. Applause broke out, soft at first, then louder. Not for the fame, not for the jet, but for the way he carried himself. Ozzy paused briefly at the top of the stairs, turned back, and gave a small, appreciative nod. Then he disappeared into the aircraft. The jet door closed, and everyone in that terminal knew they had just witnessed something unforgettable. The crowd's reaction, priceless. By the time Ozzy's jet was in the air, the story had already left the airport. Videos from the lounge flooded the internet within hours, short clips, long recordings, close-ups of the moment. The announcement echoed through the terminal. Every angle told the same story. They thought Ozzy was a driver. That headline was everywhere. Social media platforms lit up with reactions. Millions of views stacked up overnight. People replayed the footage, not just for the reveal, but for the calm dignity Ozzy showed from the very beginning. Comments poured in, legendary composure. That's how real icons behave. He didn't need to prove anything. This is what humility looks like. What struck people the most wasn't the private jet. It wasn't the captain greeting him. It was the fact that Ozzy never once used his fame as a weapon. News outlets picked up the story. Blogs broke it down frame by frame. Even people who weren't fans of his music shared the clip, because the message went far beyond celebrity. A day later, Ozzy addressed the moment with a short statement. No drama, no blame, no call-outs. Just one sentence. Respect doesn't come from status. It comes from character. That message spread just as fast as the video. People shared it under the clip, quoted it in captions, turned it into posts, stories, and comments across platforms. It resonated because everyone had seen the proof of it play out in real time. The airport staff never became the focus. Ozzy didn't want them to. The story wasn't about embarrassment. It was about reflection. Thousands of people commented that the video made them rethink how quickly they judge others. By clothes, by appearance, by assumptions. And that was the real impact. Not the jet, not the fame, not the moment of shock, but the quiet lesson that stayed long after the video ended. A legend didn't demand respect. He earned it, by showing it first. If you believe legends don't need recognition, only respect, type respect in the comments and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.